Welcome to the Love, Law, and Life Makeover Podcast, a go-to for hope, faith, and joy in changing your life. I'm Neil Presley Cox, lawyer, speaker, and author of Hope Lines. I have an easy-to-find website, neilpresleycox.com. You can't miss it. And a nice welcome for my presenter and co-host, Kelsy Gibbs.
All right. Well, Neil Presley Cox, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom to all of us today. And today's chapter is, it's a good one. It's a good one. Called Video Violence, Teens, and Gaming Addictions. I know this is like a big thing going on in our society, has been for years. But as we, obviously, as we've been seeing stuff, as more and more games and virtual reality comes into play, I know this is going to be a really interesting, this is a really interesting story, actually. So I was hoping maybe you could go over a brief overview of the chapter.
Video violence. I want to start as I talk about this story, which is about a teenager that plays games like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. These are two of probably the two most popular games on Earth. I could be wrong. I don't play these games, so I'm not quite up to speed on what the number one game is at this moment, but I know that Grand Theft Auto and all its forms is in the top, near the top of the list. So this is about a teenager that plays these games and is being raised, by a mom. And as he has entered the teen years, as is very typical, there's an increasing gulf between parent and child, and mom doesn't know what he's doing with a lot of his hours. She's got her own life, and she finds out. She finds out what he's doing. She finds out about what games he's playing and what they're like, and she finds out about a little bit about what's going on in his mind when she reads his notebooks, which are very dark and sort of zombie-ish and violent themes, and it really scares her. She didn't know he was thinking those kinds of things. She didn't know that his mind had gotten into such kind of darkness, assault weapons, violence. And so she tries to have a conversation with him as she learns about what he spends many, many hours doing, which is to play violent games. And she tries to figure out how she can help him alter the trajectory of so many hours immersed in dark, violent things. And she wants to find him and get closer and also help him. And the story sort of ends there. And we don't know whether or not she's able to alter, that path or, have any influence. But I think it's a very important thing for parents to be aware of what our children are putting in their brains over multiple hours every single day.
Oh, yeah. And it does definitely leave it open at the end. You're just like, I really don't know what's going to happen because every single situation is going to be different in this, right?
Right. This is a very controversial subject because on the one hand, you've got the teenagers who love these games. I mean, they are very realistic and graphic and give them options on weaponry and vehicles, and they can, just sort of immerse themselves in this really exciting world that they get to do a lot of crazy things like drive insanely fast and crash cars into things and steal cars and design their own kinds of cars and shoot people and run over people. And to teenage minds, it's very open-ended and fun and freeing. And on the other hand, you've got parents who they love their kids. They don't want their kids to fall into things that are not healthy. And then you've got these video game makers that are making billions of dollars, and any corporations that make billions of dollars have an entire network of experts and people that want to spew out information that will either deflect from any negativity or criticism or things that cause them bad press, or outright pseudo experts mislead the public about what's really going on. We saw that in past times with tobacco. These companies hired experts to tell people that cigarette smoking is really not bad for you, and the people that are saying it is bad are just fuddy-duddies and whatever. And so with any corporation that's making a fortune, there's instantly a network of experts and pseudo experts that are going to try to deflect and minimize the problems or the unhealthy aspects of their products.
So, as parents, what would you say is a strategy that they'd be able to implement with their kids to help, you know, to help them throughout life?
It really depends upon the age of the child. I mean, some parents want to go to the level of, with their young children, they want to, kind of isolate them from society's problems nowadays and homeschool and not allow technology or have it be extremely curtailed, including television, so that it's, especially at an early age, say birth to 10, they have it very regulated and sheltered. And then even after that, they're continuing, with homeschooling and trying to keep people away from technology. And other parents, and a lot of that is, faith-based schools and things of that nature. Then you've got parents that are looking for that middle ground. And that's, I think most parents are looking for that middle ground. And it's a real struggle because so much of our society is now so open-ended. And once your kids go to other people's homes, if they're playing Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto, these kids, at 7, 8, 9, 10, or 5, I really hate to see that, but these kids that go to their friends' houses and start playing these games with them are going to get so excited and so, culturally attuned to it, where it's being allowed in these other homes, that, you really kind of start fighting a losing battle once that takes hold, especially if you're allowing it in your own home. So sort of like the energy drinks, the longer that you can keep things away, in the formative years, the better your child's going to be. Same thing with substances like pot and alcohol too. The child that starts pot and alcohol at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is in a much worse developmental place than the child that starts these things at 16. And I'm not advocating for starting at 16, quite obviously, but
Right.
the developmental stage of the brain of a young person is huge. So the longer you can keep them away from these things, the better, I think, as things progress.
So, what is like one of the tactics in here in the book that I found was good is, um, it said bad mouthing the games will strengthen your child's love for the games you dislike the most. And you're kind of like throwing some reverse psychology in there, like, hey, don't use it in this way because it's going to backfire. It's going to make them like it more. They're going to be more apt to like go that direction. So what's a way, I mean, is neutrality, I mean, I would guess that neutrality would be a better stance on it versus I hate these games, don't ever play them. I don't know, like how would you?
Yeah, we feed, it's just human nature to feed the thing that we despise, by going off about it. It sort of gives it this rebellion thing and makes it attractive, that forbidden fruit kind of a thing. So I think that the best thing to do, especially with the younger ones, is just to redirect them away. If your parent attitude is that you're not allowed to do this at this age, then I think you can, you don't need to get into a bad mouthing the game, or, or the kids that are playing it, and just simply, this is our rule, and, we're firm on this rule at this point, and we're going to move on to allowing you to do this other thing. And then the discussion at some point should stop and just let it go and just be firm in what you're doing.
Let's focus more on the redirection.
Yeah, the redirection, what you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have to do, sports, whatever. And here's the other thing about this story is I've gotten pushback from people on it about the debate is, are these games producers of violent behavior? And, it's a really interesting debate. And I like to go back to common sense. If I hang around, the old saying in recovery is, if you keep hanging around a barber shop again and again, you're going to wind up getting a haircut. And so I think the debate misses the point here. Whatever we put our heart and excitement and energy into becomes a part of us. And
Mm.
I just don't see how one can get around that point. So if a child is playing a violent game and subjecting themselves to violence again and again and again for hours and hours, and they absolutely adore it, and that's what they want to do the minute they get home from school, to say that there isn't an adverse effect from surrounding yourself with violence, I think is very naive, and it defies common sense. I'm not saying that these games, take a person from A to B to C and they become violent. I'm not saying that, and the studies don't say that. But to say that it doesn't have a role in societal violence, I think is nonsensical and defying common sense. Here's the other thing about these games is, like a lot of things in our society, America is an exciting place, and I think we go to the extreme in everything. It wasn't enough to have in the 80s, really powerful marijuana that would get you very intoxicated. No, our society had to go and create pure 100% THC that will really just almost make you pass out. And so in these video games, it's the same thing. It started out as Pong. It started out as bouncing a ball back and forth. That was the first video game.
I
Bounce
remember
the
that
ball.
game.
Like tennis.
Yeah.
And so from there, we've gone to, more and more realistic and more interactive. And so one of the things that people, I think parents need to understand is these games like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto are what I call first person shooter games. So in other words, rather than being, when you watch a movie or a TV show, you're absorbing entertainment, but you're not actually a player in the situation. These violent games are first person games. In other words, your child is confronted with a series of choices, and they're doing this for hours. They're getting these choices as to whether or not to pull the trigger and to who to shoot. And they're given high powered weaponry so that they can make these decisions to shoot or not shoot constantly, every few seconds. They're allowed to engage in automatic weapon fire and to decide who to kill. And so, and if you get on these games and watch them a little bit, you're going to see, in particular, Grand Theft Auto, they get to make the choice to steal cars, to violently pull people out of the vehicle, steal the vehicle. The person that they pull out and throw to the ground when they steal the vehicle gets run over oftentimes. And or they get to shoot police officers, they get to shoot innocent people. It's not just shooting at somebody that's shooting back at you. They get to make the decision in their mind to shoot a hostage or to shoot an innocent person. And so again, I submit that getting to make these decisions repeatedly over the course of hours and finding it highly enjoyable and entertaining, I think it's extremely naive to assume that doesn't have some form of bad impact. You, the
Mhm.
parent, get to decide what that impact is. But I'm simply urging that parents watch these games and see. I think it's horrible. I personally believe that offering a child the opportunity to make decisions like that with a high-powered weapon on a game is absolutely abhorrent. I think it's terrible. I think it's gone to the extreme. The pendulum has swung toward anything goes. But we all get to make, as parents, make those own decisions.
So I know a lot of it had like one of the strategies too was talking about snooping, like gathering information, arm yourself with information is how you put it. So I mean, kids have so much time and there's so much out there. I know that there's parental controls that people can use. And then kind of like what you said, previewing stuff as well, like previewing the games and previewing the shows. It's interesting though, because a lot of things that I've noticed, uh, even in the world of, the adults, like I'll find a show that I love the first season, so I watch the second, the third, and the second and the third are usually like a lot, like they're way past. If the first season had been the second and third season, I wouldn't have watched it, right? Because it like progressively seems to get worse. And so I'm wondering, like, how can one kind of keep a tab on it? Like, okay, I found this great show or I found this great game and I think it's good for my kids. But as that game or show evolves, it could get a lot worse than where it started. It ends up being the sliding scale of slowly getting worse. I don't know.
But
Have you seen that pattern?
you're not saying that the makers of these shows or the makers of these games would deliberately, like, kind of just like give us a teaser to get us into it before they really, they get you addicted, and then gradually, increase the dosage of whatever the bad thing is. You're not saying that, are you, Kelsey? They wouldn't do that, would they?
I mean, it's just something I've noticed.
I
Typically, I
think
end up
that
only
isn't that what
watching the
addiction
first.
is? Any kind of addiction, that you start out small and then the dosage has to increase. Isn't that the nature of addiction? At the
Wow, that
very
was
end of
very
this,
well put.
at the very end of this story, I talk about the entertainment software rating board that rates video games. I think that this rating guide system is inherently flawed, and I think it's tied into the video gaming system that funnels money to them. So I think as a parent, you need to create your own rating system as to what you believe is right and wrong.
Almost like putting it on the parents to figure out like morally what they believe is the best thing. Leaving it up to
I just am
whoever's rating
astounded
it.
by the darkness in some of these things. Some of our movies and shows and these games, the proliferation of just people doing horrible things to people, and just the darkness and zombies and constant killing. We've become very desensitized to it, and I don't think that's a good thing.
Mm,
I abhor violence.
yeah, I think you're to definitely to say that there's no correlation between violent, video games and movies and the violent, seeing the violence in the world. It's not like that would be um, extremely ignorant to think that.
There's a quote from an old movie that's a real classic called HUD. And this man says, little by little, the country changes because of the people we admire. So what we're putting up there on a pedestal and where we're putting our energy is going to affect us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right, exactly. Because how we think and how we feel creates our personal reality. So if we're thinking about violence all of the time and we're, like you said, bringing it into our hearts and like feeling that, it's going to mess with us. It's at least gonna it's going to affect our, how we interact with the world, how we interact with people, what our perceptions are.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for explaining it that way. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's yeah, thank you so much for writing this book and sharing this with us. I think I love how you bring this light into the world. Just like some extra things to think about. Maybe we thought about it before, maybe it's like come up, but kind of bringing it back to front and center, I think is really helpful. So thank you
I
for that,
used to
Neil.
love Super Mario,
Oh
and
yeah.
I used to love a game from Atari called Stampede where you had to quickly lasso horses. And
Oh,
so I didn't grow up on shooter games. And, so that's my background, my perspective.
I played a computer game called Pitfall, and he's in the jungle, and he's got a I think he didn't have a gun. I think he had a slingshot. So like, yeah, you had to defend yourself from snakes and things in the jungle, and you're just trying to survive and collect. I don't even remember what we were collecting, but
Okay.
something. But it was cute. It was a fun little game. I liked it because it felt like nature. I'm not going to go outside and play in nature right now. I'm going to play it digitally on my computer.
Yeah. Games that involve creativity as opposed to destruction.
Yeah. Aw. Well, is there any final thoughts or any advice that you'd like to share with us before we end?
It's just that we have to start somewhere, and in raising kids and in having a society that we want, a good society. We have to start somewhere. So if we can't just flatly change the world and abolish Grand Theft Auto, we can at least protect our kids a little bit and just take one little 5% rule step, make one little change. Don't
Mm,
tackle the whole thing or become hopeless about it, but just make a small change, even if it's just limiting the amount of time on the games.
love it. Thanks, Neil, for your
Thank
time.
you.